I didn't have a friend in that room, um, and I knew it. And then I asked about this opiate. Said it was him and him alone, which is yet another lie because it smacked of his aunt, Rila Harpy. Was her fingerprints were all over it, and I exploded. And I can be quite devastating. And I remember the Rila Harpy at one point not realizing that she was very much included in the explosion, doing this little mollifying thing. Oh, well, Scott, you just don't understand. You just don't understand. I understand all too well, because, not setting the world on fire intellectually, that crowd. Perfectly reasonable people in a way. Petty, small, um, um, suburban horror stories, humorless. Um, and during that, at one point, that's when I heard about how Caitlin was morally superior to me because she'd had children. And while being morally superior, I noticed that she used the word moral incorrectly in a sentence twice. Modifying a superlative was one of them. She was more moral than me. And the other thing that she did at that point was she knew all about our orgies. Now, at the time, I thought she meant, gay people's orgies in general, but Barry and I used to have a big party every summer, with themes and food, and quite elaborate because we were, trying to be in the gay community in Kingston, and Barry and I were very much in a committed monogamous relationship, and quite frankly, for the last year, we hadn't had sex. I mean, Barry was too ill, and when you're dealing with a situation like that, that whole side of life just kind of dries up and is so unimportant to you. And then to have this horrible, smug woman giving me that, and just a whole bunch of things. A lot of ugliness was said on both sides. And I probably wasn't completely fair, but they left. And I remember one of the things that I had said to her because of this coffee thing. She made this coffee, and in this blow up, it had started by my turning on her and saying, "Just what makes you think that you can come into my home, go into my kitchen, and offer refreshments? You don't know me that well." Which is very much my mother, who was a half a girl and could play that kind of social slight very well. I really cut that off, the family, and that off at that point, because there was nothing in it for me, and it was all going to be. And it's only later that I realized that part of how deep my despair got was that plainly everybody else connected with this funeral and Barry's death saw our relationship as some deep, dark shame. And I was very, proud of our relationship. And the fact that, I had been through a year and a half of hell. And It looked like, and it eventually was, another year and a half of hell dealing with the estate. And I did, because I was the guy on the spot, did all the physical stuff. I mean, and Sussex did little more than paperwork. And yet, I'm the awful one. And this is part of the thing of the attitude towards gay people, of people of Kent's generation, and the idea that merely by tolerating you being in the room, you're being done a favor. Certainly that my and Barry's relationship should be celebrated in any way was no, it was something that was a deep, dark secret that was going to be hushed up and as quickly forgotten as is humanly possible. Well, Sussex and Caitlin were busily minimizing my impact on the estate, so whole things that were supposed to come to me, like half the house, just didn't happen. The money was used up in paying off the tax that their part of the estate had, which was these RSPs, was used up in paying off the tax on the RSPs, and there was another one that I didn't get. But Barry and I also owned another house that was rented out, and because of the law being the way the law is, they couldn't touch that. So I did get that, and eventually about $13,000, but I'd had to get a lawyer. And in fact, it cost me $1,500 in lawyers' letters just to find out where they had buried Barry, because I was not invited to the funeral. And as a recommendation to people, get married. There was discussion at one point between Barry and I about us getting married, and it was felt that a common law relationship would have been good enough. Would be good enough, because he really didn't want to disturb the kids. But from a legal point of view, boys and girls, get married, and suddenly the respect level goes up, and the obligation to you level goes up. About the family appreciates all you did for our father. They're, of course, referring to my looking after him while he was dying. And that certainly is something that I did for Barry. He had someone, without me, he would never have died in his own home. Sussex would have had his father institutionalized so fast his head would have spun. But what I gave Barry was 7 years of being who he was with the world in a loving relationship. A life that didn't include 1,258,000 lies and deceits and all of that. The ability to realize that the world liked him for him, mostly. I mean, with the exception of family, which was quite grudging. And not all the family, some less distant. And to give the kids their due, they had been sort of lied to all their lives. But on the other side of that is the fact that society had sort of demanded those lies of Barry. And if you've ever been a gay person and come out, certainly in my day, much less so now, you will get 1 million people who will think and say that being deceitful is the way to go. And certainly in certain parts of the world where you can easily be killed for being gay, that is true. But with the lifting of the deep, dark shame and the normalizing of relationships amongst people, and the ability to be open and honest about who and what you are, so much good is coming to the world, and it did so much good for Barry. The load was, well, I watched it happen. I watched the load lighten on him, him become a happy person,